As I said, I was ordained yesterday. And do you know what the most unexpected gift I've received from my ordination? This notebook. It's the notebook from my 30-day retreat. So as Jesuit novices, we make a 30-day cycle retreat right after we enter the novitiate. And I made mine 11 years ago in Grand Coteau. It's about 2 hours west of here. Maybe some of you have heard of it, have been there. On my way back to Grand Coteau for a retreat before my ordination, I flew into New Orleans and I ran into one of my mentors, Father Billy Hewitt. And he picked me up from the airport, he took me out to dinner, we went back to the residence at Loyola, New Orleans, and we went into his room. He says, "I have something for you." And he opened the drawer and he pulled out this notebook. It's a very auspicious thing right before you start a retreat. So the notebook sat on my desk for the first 2 days of the retreat. I didn't remember anything at all about it, and I was at once curious and terrified to encounter my former self 11 years ago when I was 22. But on the third day of the retreat, I had a sense from God that it was time to open the notebook, and so I began to read. And what I initially encountered in those opening pages, what we call the first week of the spiritual exercises, was really discouraging. Because I did, in fact, recognize myself. I recognized myself all too well. The same failings, the same short-sightedness, the same hang-ups. And despite the longest and probably the most expensive formation of any religious order in the Catholic Church, I realized that for me, not much had changed. The formation really hadn't done anything. So I put the notebook down. A couple more days into the retreat, once again I had the sense from God that it was time to open this notebook. And I kept reading. But as I read, I realized that perhaps I had changed. Or rather, God had changed me. As I moved in to start praying about Jesus' ministry, which really I could only understand in the abstract as a novice, memories flooded back of all of the different experiences of ministry I've had over the years as a Jesuit. Time serving immigrants in Tijuana, working in inner city Chicago, teaching high school in Dallas, Texas, walking the Camino in Spain. And as I walked with Jesus in his ministry toward the cross, even the difficult moments of his ministry reminded me of difficult moments in my own ministry. Sitting with parents in hospital rooms, accompanying the dying. And I used to be scared of those places, but over the past 11 years, I saw how God has invited me to enter more deeply into those places too. And as I passed through the crucifixion to the resurrection, memories came back of profound joy. Dinners at people's houses, or maybe occasionally I drink too much because I'm so joyful. Moments of healing on the many retreats I've had the privilege to help with. Restaurant tour of San Francisco. And baptisms. There's something about baptisms that really puts a smile on my face every time. So on the last night of the retreat, as I finished reading the notebook, I realized I was wrong. That I am not the same person who entered the Jesuit order almost 11 years ago. Thanks to the gentle, patient invitation of the God who led me there. The same God who we encounter in the readings today. The gospel passage that Father Lewis, my community mate, just read is probably one of the most famous in the entire New Testament. You've probably heard it 1,000 times, but there's something you may not know about this passage. Who is Jesus speaking to? Jesus is speaking to Nicodemus, one of the Jewish leaders who has come to him by night with the conviction that there's something real here as he listens in the back of the crowd to Jesus' message. But at the same time, because he's coming at night, not during the day, terrified of what this might mean. And Jesus' words initially don't do much for Nicodemus either. Because after this long, philosophical, confusing discourse about water, spirit, flesh, wind, We don't see Nicodemus again for another 4 chapters, when he makes a brief appearance in the 7th chapter of John, defending Jesus in front of the other religious leaders. Something in him is working. Some seed of grace is percolating. Finally, 10 chapters later, we see Nicodemus for the 3rd time. He helps prepare Jesus' body for burial. Not only does he pay for 100 pounds of spices and myrrh, not only does he remain faithful, unlike many of Jesus' other disciples who have fled, but this intimate gesture shows how much he cares about Jesus as he accompanies him on his journey one final time. The initial encounter with Jesus has transformed him powerfully, from the frightened skeptic who would only see Jesus by night to the one who will help him prepare his body during the day. And the story of Nicodemus this morning raises a question for us. How has our encounter with Jesus transformed us? Because when we think of conversion, especially with this reading, don't we often think of these instantaneous magical experiences, like St. Paul on the road to Damascus? But I would propose that the more interesting, the more lasting, the more deep, and the more real changes in our lives are the ones that take place slowly and gradually in response to God's gentle invitation. Sometimes it takes more than one invitation. The Old Testament reading from Exodus that we heard, where Moses is going up to the mountain, is God's second try. Imagine that, God's second try. Because the first time Moses came down the mountain, in his absence, the Israelites constructed a golden calf. And God was so mad, he ordered Moses to smash the tablets. Like the Israelites, we too can be a stiff-necked people. But as God himself says to Moses up there on the mountain, the Lord is a merciful and gracious God, slow to anger and rich in kindness and fidelity. Because we may give up on ourselves, but God never gives up on us. We may take the long way around, but God does not abandon us. And as I said at the beginning of the Mass, I think that the feast that we celebrate today, the Solemnity of the Most Holy Trinity, testifies to this truth. Because though God may present himself in different ways at different times of our lives, at the core, that God is the same. The same God who was in my baptism at this parish 33 years ago. The same God who invited me to join the Jesuits 11 years ago. The Jesus in the face of the suffering migrants in Tijuana that moved me so as a novice. The Holy Spirit and the energy of the high school boys in the classrooms at Dallas Jesuit. Jesus, the caring friend present with the sick in a hospital room. And the Lord who feeds us in word and sacrament at this table today. Especially as we get older and start to look back at our lives, when we face transitions and wonder about what will come next, here too the same Lord invites us to take heart, because the same God who walked with us up until now will continue to walk with us, as the poet Rilke expresses so beautifully. Only as a child am I awake and able to trust that after every fear and every night I will behold you again. However often I get lost, however far my thinking strays, I know you will be here, right here, time trembling around you. To me it is as if I were at once infant, boy, man, and more. I feel that only as it circles is abundance found. I thank you, deep power, that works me ever more lightly in ways I can't make out. The day's labor grows simple now, and like a holy face held in my dark hands.